Good afternoon. Welcome back to Edge of the Web. Hey, your marketing needs to be reviewed during this crisis, and we've talked about this for a couple shows. We're talking about the impact COVID-19 has on PPC with Amy Bishop of Cultivative today on The Edge.
Your weekly digital marketing trends with industry trend-setting guests. You're listening and watching Edge of the Web. Winners of Best Podcast from the Content Marketing Institute for 2017. Here and see more at edgeofthewebradio.com. Now, here's your host, Aaron Sparks.
All right, so this is Edge of the Web Radio, episode 350. Woohoo! You don't even have a sound effect for me. Hands clapping?
I could sing.
I'm your host, Aaron Sparks. Thanks for joining us. And would you believe I'm going to be turning 50 next week? We didn't link those shows up, did we?
See, again, I could sing.
You could sing. What would you sing if you could sing?
Happy birthday.
Well, there you go.
But then we got to pay royalties, so not happening.
All right, so welcome to the show, and thanks for all our listeners and audience over the years. We really appreciate your following and your listening. It helps us build an audience, and certainly helps us with our sponsorships. Every week, we bring you the amazing guests to chat with about trending digital marketing news and tactics. We unpack some key concepts and deep dive with our guests on a regular basis. We'll talk about SEO, social media, conversion rate optimization, video marketing, all a sundry of different digital marketing techniques, because there's so many things out there. And on top of that, there's a lot of myths and things that need to be debunked regularly. So this is why we do what we do. But along with it, we also use it for our own information to be able to keep our powder dry and educate us, as we are a digital marketing agency here in Indianapolis, Indiana. Want to make sure that we actually do the best for our own clients. That's what we do, Be sure to check out all the recent shows over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. If you're new to the show, let us give you the ropes here. We usually go live on Mondays. Unfortunately, this is Wednesday, and things had to be shifted around a little bit. But we usually go live on YouTube Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And as soon as we actually roll that show out, and we certainly appreciate any live interaction during the show, we'll pivot around, use our audio to be able to roll out the podcast, get it out to all the podcast aggregation platforms, and then we'll go so far as to transcribe and be able to provide you some good blog content around that show. So follow all that information over at edgeofthewebradio.com, and be sure to hit that bell. Remind yourself whenever we go live over at youtube.com/edge of the web. And if we're not on a podcast platform near you, or the one that you prefer, let us know, please, at info@edgeofthewebradio.com, and we'll certainly get our content over to you. The entire show is actually sponsored by their title sponsor, Site Strategics. We are the agile digital marketing firm here in Indianapolis, Indiana, focusing on SEO, deep technical SEO knowledge, SEM, social media, conversion rate optimization, and the omni-channel side of broadcast. And this is what we do with our own studio. Was actually, we've built this to be able to deliver video content, audio content, and all the other lanes of the digital highway, and be able to repurpose it with a curative focus and do it efficiently as well. So if you're interested in what that means, what that could be for you, give us a call over at 877-SEO for Web, or 877-736-4932. All right. In the quarantined production booth, we've got Jacob Mann, studio producer. You are behind 2 panes of glass, 4 panes of glass.
I think it's one on this side.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But no, it's still safe.
It is safe.
Way safer than the stuff I see them. Have you been in any gas stations where they've hung those big plexiglass windows now? And I mean, it's better than nothing. I get it.
It's like the removable sneeze guard at the remember the racks?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So that's some old fast food. Anyway, so they got a sneeze guard in all the different gas stations.
Seen that.
And have you also seen the flight pattern of a sneeze in like a grocery store?
No.
They actually had a demonstration of a cloud from the sneeze, and it's like 25 foot, and it's going over aisles into other aisles. So I sincerely doubt that anything's going to protect those gas station attendants.
Yeah. I think it's just there to show that we're doing what we can.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I had someone checking out my groceries the other day. I mean, I was wearing my mask and my gloves, and she said, "How you doing?" I'm fine. I said something about the mask being really hot. She's like, "Yeah, that's why I don't wear mine."
Huh.
You know, and I mean, obviously she wasn't wearing one when I walked up to her, but I was just kind of like, that's weird. Like, you're here all day just like grabbing everything that's coming down that conveyor belt and like, just whatever.
Oh, I guess they make their own choices, obviously, but hey, this is the best way to prevent it is to hunker down, and if you're out there, use the mask. Use the mask not only for yourself getting infected, but also if you are potentially contagious, that mask is for everybody else too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, happy 350 to you, man.
Thank you.
350 episodes. Now, obviously, you were a latecomer to the show.
Yeah, a little bit.
But 350 episodes of Edge of the Web. We've been doing it for over 8 years now, and really excited to be able to keep on bringing you great content. Excited to be able to meet some fantastic individuals around the planet that are doing digital marketing. So thanks for everybody to be able to keep us going as well. So since we got to get some sponsorships on these shows as well. So your listenership and your following also help in that regard. Some Edge notes real quick, housekeeping and upcoming. We got Lily Ray, the indomitable Lily Ray, coming on 420 next week on next Monday. And we also have Christine Schasinger. I'm gonna hear about that. Sure. Oh Lord.
And that's why I sit on this side of the glass.
I had it in pre-show. She's coming on. We're talking about digital marketing as well, 427, and she's probably going to read me the right of how I pronounce her last name. I'm sorry. We're also, there's many more in the queue, Bill Sebald and Paul Lovell. If you're interested if you're a thought leader or a individual that usually goes to conferences and speaks, hey, jump online and let us know if you would be interested in being part of the show. Just give us a quick email over at info@edgeofthewebradio.com. That's info@edgeofthewebradio.com. Be sure to set your reminders for the YouTube to get live update when we go live with the show. All right. Last thing, we want to make sure that we hear from you. So if you go over to edgeofthewebradio.com, we have an anonymous poll. Let us know what you'd like to hear more of from the show, whether it's advanced SEO, thought leadership, social media, conversion rate optimization. There's a plethora of options there. Go on over there and let us know what you would like to hear. It's completely anonymous. We just want to hear some feedback from our listeners. And thank you for everybody chiming in. It's been great. All right, so that's the show housekeeping. Let's turn around. We want to make sure that you listen to the news section, the news podcast, the bonus podcast that accompanies each and every show. We cover some great articles regarding the crisis right now, some fantastic information. So jump onto that podcast right after you listen to this podcast. But for now, let's deep dive with this week's featured guest. All right, so we've got Amy Bishop on the line here. Amy is actually the owner of Cultivative. She's actually built and implemented multi-channel digital strategies on a variety of companies of all sizes, from startups to small businesses to Fortune 500 companies and global organizations spanning several different industry verticals. Her expertise includes e-commerce, lead generation, localized site-to-store strategies. Fantastic. She's also a repeat guest on the show. She's been here, I think, maybe 4 years ago. So, boy, in digital marketing age, I think it's longer than longer than dog years. So many things have actually changed from that point. Amy, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Yeah, we're very good, very good. Hunkered down here in Indy. Where are you, Amy? Where are you hailing from?
I am actually in Salem, Indiana, so not too far.
I knew that. I did know that. We almost invited you down to the show, except for
we're doing our part right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're close, but we're going to make sure we're socially distanced. So, Amy, it's been 4 years since you've been on the show. There's a few things that have changed in our ecosystem, huh?
Yeah, mostly in the last few weeks.
Yeah, you better believe it. So how are you guys doing on your side of the fence? Everybody able to work from home in your organization?
Yes. Yeah. So Cultivative is entirely remote. So, honestly, I feel really fortunate that as far as shifts go, that was a small shift. It's still a little bit strange not being able to go do the things that we normally do in the evening and on the weekends. But as far as just kind of work life and, carrying on as normal. There really wasn't a transition, which is nice.
It is nice in the digital marketing space. Although you love collaboration, we can easily shift in as long as we've got some space to do it in the house, right? Yeah. So for our listeners, I want to make sure that they know what you do regularly. You speak at industry conferences around the United States and internationally. You spoke at HeroConf as well as the XMX circuit, among others, and you're also the local chair of SEMPO-Louisville. Very cool. And you're also writing regular articles in search engine land and marketing land. So you're constantly giving back to the digital marketing community, and we really appreciate that.
I have received so much more than I have given. So hopefully in my lifetime, I'll be able to pay back all of the information that I've learned.
Kind of goes that way, doesn't it? I mean, literally, when one teaches to learn, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So, Amy, what does your job entail, all things considered?
So, I primarily focus on paid media. I have held a number of different roles and worked in a number of different areas of marketing, but paid media is just kind of always what I have considered home. So, everything from paid search to paid social, pretty much any platform that you can think of. That's what I do. And on the daily, I'm just in the accounts, making changes, working with clients, making adjustments based upon their goals. But really, I like to stay in the weeds, and that's what I do.
Oh, very good. I mean, and as an owner, getting hands-on on a regular basis is fantastic. But let us know your history in your own words.
So I have been in the digital media space now for 10 years, which is kind of crazy. It feels like yesterday, and then 10 years in digital marketing feels like 100 years because so much has changed since then. I worked at a variety of different agencies, a lot of which are fairly well known, from small agencies to large agencies. And then I've also worked in-house as the director of digital marketing and marketing technology. And ultimately from there decided that the only thing that I hadn't done at that point was start my own business. So I did that 2 years ago now, I guess. Again, feels like a decade ago. And that brings me to where I am now.
Very cool. So how's ownership sitting with you? I mean, sometimes it's tough, right?
I love it. This has been the toughest time, obviously, in the past month or so, but we're doing really well. We're well positioned, and there's just something about it. If that's something that interests you, anybody in the audience, I definitely have a ton of tips and information that I would love to share. So if anybody has considered it, don't hesitate to reach out to me on social. Happy to talk shop with you about it. I do think in some ways it takes a certain personality, because there are definitely pros and cons of being an owner versus working for a company. But for my needs and for where I'm located, kind of an hour from any major cities, it's been really great for me. The flexibility and being able to just reap all of the rewards from growth has just been a major benefit all around.
Very good, very good. And it's a rarity that some of our guests actually share some of the management and ownership tips. So absolutely, make sure that you track Amy down. That's fantastic. You ask about personality types. Does masochist actually work into that?
It is one. Yeah, it is one. I would say if you are a person that tends to work more than you should in your work-life balance, then ownership might be for you.
Yeah, well, that's a slippery slope there. So we're going to move away from that topic.
Hitting a little close to home there.
Yeah, I think so. Whenever I was talking to my son yesterday, a little 9-year-old, right? And we're talking through things, and we're talking about fixing up his. Actually, no, it was the 12-year-old talking about fixing up the Nerf guns and doing some upgrades, right? And yep, as soon as I realized we were talking about it, then I barely look at my watch, and he immediately tracks on. Okay, well, you got to go to work now, don't you? It's like, oh no, kid. It even hits home even worse because you're there, but you're not there.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's terrible. Anyway, all right, let's circle back around. We wanted to talk to you about, obviously, there's a number of things happening right now that are never been seen before during the COVID-19 crisis. And as news impacts continue to dominate the headlines, brands are continually evaluating what the crisis means for their business. So we've talked to a number of people here over the couple of shows as the crisis started to rear its ugly head here, and we certainly appreciate everybody's time and consideration. But we do want to keep on providing some good information of how to navigate during this period of time. Retailers who have actually relied on brick and mortar obviously have to shift their marketing focus, right? And we mentioned a few things from an article that was on Search Engine Land that Google rolled out some shifts in the marketplace. So we certainly recommend our listeners check that out. But you got to adapt. You got to survive this period of time. You got to be able to thrive as well. Facebook and Google have actually are possibly standing to lose about $44 billion in ad revenue due to the global shutdown that we've got right now. That's amazing. That's a huge number. So, Amy, we want nothing to risk, no risk on any particular client, but what shifts have you seen in the marketplace and changes in PPC strategy?
Oh my gosh, it's been all across the board. So I work with clients in a variety of different industries. So I have had a few clients that have needed to either pull back or pause because the current climate is just not one that is great for them to be doing business in, and they're just trying to conserve cash flow for the time being. And then I have had others that have been in, say, the telehealth space where they help doctors to be able to do mobile appointments. And that has completely blown up. I've seen trade schools doing really well because there are people that are at home right now and potentially people that don't have a lot of job security in their current role. And they're looking for inexpensive ways to further their education, and especially if those opportunities are online while they're at home and they have some time to focus on it.
Yep.
I've seen some really big shifts in that way. Just generally speaking, for the advertisers that have been able to stay online and that are doing really well right now, the CPMs and the CPCs that I'm seeing are coming down, which never happens.
Yeah.
I mean, this never happens, but there have been so many people that have pulled out of advertising that this is probably the first time in, I don't know, maybe all 10 years that I have worked in digital media that I've actually seen that demand go backward. And so for the people that have stuck around in Facebook, I've seen typically minimum of 30% decrease in CPMs of folks that are still getting conversions. Their conversion rates have dropped a little bit, but because CPMs have dropped so much, their CPLs are significantly lower than what they were before. And in search, I don't have an exact percentage drop, but I've seen similar where we aren't getting as many clicks. There's a little bit less click volume for some industries, depending on kind of what your industry is. But they're converting so much better, and the cost per click is so much lower that the CPL is so much better. And it's wild to me because some of the industries are not ones that I would have expected would have done really well in a situation like this. But I think you kind of nailed it earlier, where we're not in a recession yet. We're in a reaction right now. And so a lot of people haven't necessarily pulled back spending. And when I say people, I mean consumers. So when you look at something like Facebook and Instagram, I haven't seen any published data yet. It may exist. I might not have just seen it yet, but I assume that there are probably screen time for those apps is probably up quite a bit right now for some folks that have a lot of time to spend at home that they're trying to occupy. And the inventory is way more available than what it was before. It's much less saturated. So if you sell something like streaming services or entertainment, even to some extent, clothing, things like that, I think those are hurting a little bit more right now. But if you offer something to the right audience, you have a fairly captive audience and the CPMs are way lower than usual. Now is kind of a good time, if you can capitalize on it, to capitalize on it. Now, The flip side of this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, I see a lot of people with the opinion that this is the time to double down in advertising. And I don't always agree with that, because there are companies that are just not making the revenue that they typically make right now.
Right.
And I think a lot of this stems from, I believe it was Quaker Oats in the Great Recession that continued investing in marketing, and they did really well because of it. And they came out of it with a really strong brand. I think that's the backstory. And I don't doubt that that's true, but if you think about that product and that environment, it's a low-cost food. It makes sense that it did well, and it makes sense for them to continue to double down and invest. For other companies that are struggling just with their existing overhead costs, anything that they might have to pay, rent, things like that, that aren't bringing in the cash flow right now, it's hard to push them to spend more money. And so I understand when advertisers are having to pull out. And I can't say that there's a good across the board recommendation to double down in marketing, but I keep seeing that advice over and over. And I think as marketers, maybe it's a little bit self-serving to try to push that.
I think you're right. We just talked to John Henshaw last show about should you pull out of marketing during a crisis, right? And the conclusion that we came up with, and I'm a huge proponent of this, is you got to shift the message. You can't do the same thing that you were doing, because the entire the consumer's intent has shifted. And if it's not a play, meaning if you can't get it there, you can't get the message there, and it's authentic and it's correct at that moment in time from an ethical standpoint, you shouldn't ever exploit the situation. So, one is actually marketing and pushing forth during a space where you're going to have a lot of competitors that open up the area for opportunity. That it's there, but at the same time, we are in a heightened sensitivity of message right now of all brands. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think messaging is really important. And even if you have a solution for a problem that is caused by the current situation, you have to be really careful about how you message that.
Right.
Empathy is really important. Customer centricity is always important. But now more than ever, you have to really be careful about not seeming like you're taking advantage of a situation that is benefiting your company when so many others are hurting right now.
That's the thing. It's very, very touchy, and you can certainly discover great opportunities, but it has to be a smart pivot, and you got to know your inventory. You have to know all your display, all your search ads. You have to know what you're going to move consistently to different messaging, and that's tough if you just try to pivot once and all of a sudden other messaging on social ads aren't being adjusted. It could also break brand even worse, because we actually came across an article that didn't make it into this news regarding a script that's available to try to prevent yourself from being in a display ad around anything that was coronavirus or COVID messaging. Just trying to move yourself away from that pocket of information. We should probably pull that around on the show notes, because it was a really good piece of information. I can't remember who that was from, but we'll get it out there. But I mean, these are some of the things that you got to be sensitive to, because all of a sudden, even if you change your message and you're on some very sensitive material, I mean, there's so much content inside of this crisis, and people and brands are creating that content to help consumers. And if you're in there and it's an insensitive ad or just not thought through, again, there's a heightened level of consumer focus on these type of advertisements, and you're going to pay for it, right?
Absolutely. I completely agree.
So there has been some shifting benchmarks, and you mentioned a few right now. I mean, CPM dropping 30%. Conversion rates are also struggling, but at the same time, your cost per click is going down. So there are some opportunities there in the marketplace. But I came across a WordStream article. They do an industry ad, a Google ad industry benchmarks each and every year. And they dug into Google Search, Google Shopping, and display ads, as well as Bing. And they actually referenced a few changing environments here. Obviously, food and groceries, charities, and nonprofits have CTRs that far exceed their typical performance. Even industries that are actually traditionally suffering from low CTRs, like finance and legal, are actually finding some really strong footing in the SERP side of things, or in the not the SERP, the search side of things. So there's a number of industries that could benefit, especially with consumers having time on their hands. And finance and legal, I mean, who thought of that? I mean, usually you'd be interacting with that lawyer, but everybody's remote right now. Why wouldn't you actually get in there and be able to help consumers? And help is the operant word.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there are a lot of things at play here too. And I don't think lawyers have even probably hit their full demand yet. Mm-hmm. I think once this is over, there's going to be even more legal demand, which I hate to say, because unfortunately it's all a pretty sensitive topic. But I know at least in Indiana right now, nobody can be evicted, right, whether they are able to pay their rent or not. And they are still very much encouraged to pay their rent. But unfortunately, with the circumstances, it's understandable that not everybody is in the position to pay their rent. But there are people that are still getting eviction notices. And then on the flip side of that, I can see also where, whoever the landlord is, they also have a mortgage to pay. So I think that the demand for legal services will probably increase once this is all over even further. Hopefully I'm wrong on that, but I don't think we've seen that maxed out yet.
No, I mean, there's a tailwind of legal challenges that are going to be happening, and you hate seeing it, but you know it's going to happen. Hey, we got a question from our YouTube channel from Ephraim Molina. Should marketers shift towards the Gary V method of being more altruistic and giving more value up front, as in more that they would normally do right now? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I think that it's kind of spot on right now. I don't want to spoil our news that we talked about, so make sure that you come back and watch the news. But one of the things that we touched on was just the changing shift in searcher behavior.
Right.
And there are a lot of people right now that are searching informational queries, that are looking for solutions. We've all had a shift in our lives, some of us more than others. And people are looking for solutions. People are looking for new ways to do things that they haven't had to do before. So I think as much as you can create content that's relevant to your business, not just creating content just to create content, but content that's relevant, that you really are an expert in, that you can share and put forth.
Right.
I think that goes a long way. And I also think that the way that companies act right now and the amount of empathy that they show in helping in whatever capacity that they can will be remembered. So I definitely think that being altruistic right now is really important. I think it's important all the time, but right now especially, people are in a vulnerable state that they're not typically in. And so I definitely would say that that's an important shift to make.
Absolutely. And we mentioned on the show that HVAC company that shifted their communicated to their customers and actually pulled back all their maintenance crew and any unnecessary types of scheduled maintenance programs for their customers, and they offered up free transport for groceries and be able to pick up groceries and bring them to households. What a fantastic opportunity to be able to give back. And you certainly believe, you know that brands go to just have an incredible value from that type of relationship building during this period of time. So thank you for the question there, and we certainly appreciate interactivity on the live channel. So giving back really should be the norm right now. Not only giving back, but be able to help others in crisis and be able to provide content and information that's even more what do I want to say? It's even a greater give back than what you've done in the past as a brand or a marketer. That should kind of be the nature of where your mindset should be all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things that is nice to see during a crisis, I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't know the exact quote, but I think it was Mr. Rogers that said that he said something along the lines of, my mother always said, whenever something bad happens, look for the good, because there will always be people that are doing whatever they can to help. And I think that is always kind of the silver lining of situations like these. And we do see a lot of businesses that are kind of operating under this mantra that we're all in this together. And that's something that we should all be mindful of all the time, but especially now, that's really important. And seeing those things, I remember brand names when I see, certain things, or I hear advertisements, or I see articles on both sides of the coin, whether they're doing their part or whether they're taking advantage of a situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that's a perfect segue, because I wanted to bring up something that is truly fantastic. Google has actually jumped in from Google Ad Space, and they're going to be providing $340 million in ad credits to small and medium-sized businesses over the course of the months here in response to COVID-19. Small and medium-sized businesses who've been active advertisers since the beginning of 2019 will actually see a credit notification appear in their Google Ads account in the coming months. Now, you talk about looking for the good there, and there's so many different opinions of Google, and obviously we all love you, right? Right, Google? But I mean, what a great opportunity to be able to help people right there, just be able to give a credit back. And obviously it could be looked on as, hey, keep on using our services, but at the same time, being able to help people right now with some credits, that's a fantastic offering. What do you think about that?
So I think it's awesome that they're doing it. $340 million is a lot of money. It's I can't even wrap my mind around that amount of money. So that's a lot of ad credits.
Yeah, it is.
If I were going to look a gift horse in the mouth, I would say, just playing the devil's advocate, I wish that there were more clarity around this program, and I'm sure that they're still figuring it out. We've seen the way that some of the SBA loans have been rolled out, so I think it's been a challenge for everybody that's trying to help and trying to get money into the right hands to figure out really quickly who those right hands are and how to go about that. So I can completely understand that they're probably still wrapping their arms around it. But what I struggle with is that we know that SMBs that have been active advertisers since the beginning of 2019 will eventually see a credit notification appear in their Google Ads account in the coming months. What we don't know is, or at least I haven't seen this, exactly what defines an SMB for the purposes of these ad credits. So it would have to be ad spend, I would think, because that's probably all that Google would really have to go off of, because it sounds like the credits will be will come available. You don't have to apply for them. But we also don't know when they're coming. And so the thing that I struggle with is that if you have to remain an active advertiser currently, the incentive is kind of to continue to advertise. But depending on if it makes sense for you to continue to advertise or not, it's almost like the advertisers that need this the most would be the ones that are struggling to spend right now and might need to cut their spend in order to just, kind of maintain their cash flow. And so I think that it would help advertisers if they knew how much they could potentially qualify for and when they would receive it, so that they could continue to spend, even if it's a little bit painful in the short term, versus the advertisers that are doing really well right now and continuing to benefit from their spend because of the space that they're in, whether it's, the telehealth services that I mentioned earlier, trade schools or things like that. They're likely going to get a credit, and that's really good for them too, because I think almost all businesses are affected in some ways, even though some more than others. But I just wonder, is this really helping the people that need it the most based upon the qualifications, or could it help them more if they at least had more information and they felt more confident that they weren't, they're kind of being asked to operate on faith right now. And I struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah, and you can always look at that side of it and see, okay, is this just a tease to be, not tease, this is a plan to actually keep advertisers in the lane, right? And there's no information regarding when, that they just say over the corresponding months, and if you don't use them by December 31st, then they'll be removed from Google Ads. Let's look at it altruistically. I think it's going to be a value to a lot of companies. Hopefully, they'll even offer it out to companies that were actively running even up to the shutdown. And
that's my hope.
That would be the best play in the world. If you're not going to give credits to a company that was spending $4,000 a month with you, and then they had to shut down because they were a restaurant, right? Mm-hmm. It would be a wonderful play if Google actually offered out those credits to that restaurant, so they could offer out their to-go menu as opposed to just being shut down and not being able to advertise. If Google's listening, that would be a smart one to actually to jump on, if I may say so myself.
And Facebook is offering credits too. Cool. And so I think that's really interesting. They're not offering quite as much. They're offering 100 million, but theirs is detailed as 100 million in cash grants and ad credits. So it doesn't say what the split will be between ad credits and grants, but it says that the program is designed to help with workforce, rent costs, operational costs, and connecting with customers, which would be the ad credits, obviously.
Sure.
They have given more details around who would qualify. So they will give grants to up to 30,000 SMBs, which means it's probably, Google sounds a little bit more like, if you meet our criteria, we'll divide it somehow. We'll determine who gets how much. Facebook sounds more like we're going to pick a select 30,000, which is still a really high number. But they have to have between 2 and 50 employees, and they have to be near a location where Facebook operates. So that's probably the most restrictive qualification, because in the US, there are only about 28 cities that businesses can be located in order to qualify.
Oh, wow.
Which are the big ones that you would think of. And then there are also some kind of random ones like New Albany, Ohio, which is not New York City by any means. Mm-hmm. But there are, for instance, no locations in Indiana. So if you're a business in Indiana, you can't qualify for the Facebook grant. However, it is a global program. So the 30,000 SMBs won't only be in the United States, but depending on your country, you have to go in and then you have to choose which location that you're close to. And if you're not in one of their select cities, then you aren't qualified. Mm-hmm. So if I were looking a gift horse in the mouth, that would be my one flaw with Facebook, is just that, it doesn't even sound like you have to be an advertiser. So I like that. But I do think there are a lot of companies that rely heavily on Facebook and that use Facebook extensively, despite their location. So beyond that, though, the business has to have been operating for at least a year. It has to be for profit, which is interesting and makes me wonder if they're going to do something separate for nonprofits. And then, of course, you have to have experienced challenges from the current climate, which I think almost all businesses have in some way. But it's really interesting because they're structured so much differently. But ultimately, to your point, that is a combined almost $500 million between Google and Facebook that they're giving back to small businesses.
Absolutely.
And, that's going to help a lot of businesses.
It really is. Hopefully Bing gets into the mix as well, because I think there is a value on the Bing platform. If you can't afford the I guess the mainstream Google ad spend and the higher cost per clicks, there is Bing, and alternatively, you could easily move your ad campaign over to Bing. I wouldn't recommend that if you're actually getting credits from Google. keep the space. So we'd love to hear back at Edge of the Web if companies start to get that. It's some good feedback. I don't know when it's going to happen. It was announced, I think, the 24th or the 17th of March. So it's brand new out of the gate. So keep an eye on that. Are you hearing any other opportunities in the marketplace right now from different ad platforms providing that outside of Facebook and Google?
Not yet. Facebook's, I should have mentioned, I do think you have to actually apply for it. I don't think the application is open yet. So if your business would potentially qualify, that's something that you should definitely just look into and try to see when that application opens. With Google, you don't have to apply. I haven't heard of any others in the space yet, but I think there's a good chance we might still hear of some.
Okay. All right. Well, this is some good information for the small and medium-sized businesses, as well as the advertising agencies that listen to the show. What other opportunities would you do you perceive right now for the advertiser, the paid advertiser that wants to keep their ads going, shifting message? Any tips, any thoughts, recommendations of how to address your current ad campaign?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it goes all the way back to business operations and how you can be flexible, how you can pivot in this way. So what do clients or customers, what have they always leaned on you for? Is there a way that you can do that now in a more virtual manner than you were previously doing? Is there another gap that you can fill? Is there another problem that you can solve for? But also just people are looking for connection right now. I think that the message that we're all in this together, and I think that kind of just having those conversations, I think that's more important now than ever. So I don't necessarily know from a media standpoint if there's a way that people prefer to receive their media, but I think now would be a really great time to test video if you haven't. And even if it's super authentic, like everybody's at home right now. Everybody's at home. So, I mean, Saturday Night Live is being done from home. So there's a lot of forgiveness as well if you wanted to test videos and create something really authentic from your iPhone or something like that that is not expected to be a professional commercial. And I think it's even funny because watching TV and seeing like people at a birthday party in a movie, it feels weird initially because I'm like, they shouldn't be there. And then I remember that I'm watching TV. And so I think
it's kind of awkward, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think that there's a lot of room in ads too, to be, really authentic at home and creating that content. And whether it's video or not, it could just be your messaging and the way that you're talking to people and acknowledging some of the struggles that people are facing. I think that that's really important and that's really valuable, but also driving to content that may be positioned a little bit differently than the way that you typically position content, and not going totally off brand or anything like that, but just taking, I don't even want to say take advantage of, because that sounds horrible, but recognizing that there are opportunities for more content right now, and that people are filling gaps and people are spending probably more time online and looking to do things different ways. And just being able to address those shifts, I think are really important. So it's not just in your ad itself, but it's also in the content and the messaging that you're delivering when people are clicking through. And it's really that whole experience.
Absolutely. It's fantastically said. You have to shift and help, and all points on the consumer touch. You have to change that message all the way to the destination. Even the response emails, right? From a conversion standpoint, change how you're messaging in those spaces. Well, I certainly appreciate the insights there. This is a tough time, and you'd hate to see companies shut down their marketing impulsively without considering what the opportunities are, and on top of that, how they can help their consumers just by thinking through the challenges that their consumers are going through and delivering a different message at that time. it's not taking advantage. It's actually connecting to your consumers. And if you hadn't
Absolutely.
thought about that before, I mean, that should be part of your marketing strategy to begin with. Maybe this crisis is just kind of forcing us to look at it in that space.
That's a good point. I think that we are all going to learn some life lessons, and that's a good marketing lesson.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Amy, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We're going to be wrapping up at the end of every one of our interviews, and you I think you remember this. We always ask you what really bugs you about your industry right now.
Oh man, it's really funny that you said right now, because this is kind of like the perfect storm, I guess, for things that bug me. And I would say one of those things, and this is something that has always bugged me, but we're seeing a lot of it now, is people capitalizing on negative events and doing it in a self-promotional way. And so, we've talked about COVID-19 for pretty much the whole episode, but initially when the news started to break, you would see like promotional emails that are like, use code Corona, and just that just pains me to my core. But it's not just situations like this. With the really unfortunate Kobe Bryant situation, when his helicopter went down, there were content pieces around just basically trying to capitalize on the search volume of his name. Things that I learned from Kobe that have prepared me for a career in marketing. Like, if it's not something that you would have written outside of the tragedy, then don't do it. Just don't do it.
Well, that seems like an eon ago, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it does. Wow. So I would say if it's not something that is truly helpful, and if you are capitalizing on a trend just to capitalize on a trend, don't do it.
Hey, ethics in marketing. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew?
And we certainly know that you've got to be in your bonnet regarding the Google Partner Program.
Yes.
So good thing they moved that puck down a little further, because that landing in June of this year would have been a whole other set of shows for us. That's for darn sure.
Yes, absolutely. I think it was really smart on their part to move it. I don't know that they really had a choice, but moving that was for the better. Yep.
Well, conversely, what excites you about your industry? Maybe not right now, but as we were building into 2020, or right now as well. It's your pick.
Yeah, I would say generally it's almost always the same. Anytime anybody would ask me this, there's always so much to learn. There's always so much changing. And I love that about our industry. So in the current climate, there's a lot that's changing, not necessarily within the platforms, but just in the way that we are doing business and the way that we are marketing. And I love that. And I love to read content and watch other people present, because I love to hear everybody's ideas, because we all have very different ideas about how to approach different situations. And there's just always so much to learn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, any final thoughts before we break in this moment, managing PPC, Google Ads or Bing Ads or whatever ad platform you're on? Some final thoughts to the digital audience that's out there.
I would say right now, like any industry, times may be tough, but hang in there. This is not forever. So anything that you can do to pivot, adjust, be helpful to your customers, it will help you in the long term, and it'll help you build those relationships. But in the meantime, hang in there.
Very good. Well, we certainly want to lift up your marketing agency. That's cultivativemarketing.com, cultivativemarketing.com. We wish you all the best in the world. And one of these days, we got to get you in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, we want to make sure our audience listens to the bonus episode of this show 350, and that is the news that we covered. Some really good articles regarding this particular situation we're in, as well as some insights from some top authorities. So check that out as well. I want to follow Amy over at what's your social handles? You got LinkedIn, Amy Bishop Marketing. What's your Twitter handle?
It's actually at Hoffman8, which is confusing, but
what is that? Yeah, what is that?
It's my maiden name.
Got it. All right. So follow Amy Hoffman8 on Twitter. All right. So from all of us, thanks so much for being part of the show. We really do appreciate it. And let us know how best we can help you. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. All right. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Edge of the Web Radio on YouTube. And if you're really feeling up to it today, give us a review on your podcast platform. We love some reviews on iTunes. It's great to be able to hear from you. And that's also how we kind of optimize our content out there as well. Check out all the must-see videos, all the content, transcripts, and much more over at edgeofthewebradio.com. That's edgeofthewebradio.com. Next week, we are going to be talking to the indomitable Lily Ray. So excited to be able to talk about SEO, and she had some really astute observations about things that are happening right now in SEO regarding COVID-19. So we're going to unpack that blog that she just put out there. From all of us over at Edge of the Web, stay safe, stay healthy, and do not be a piece of cyber driftwood. We'll talk to you next week.